Monday, May 7th, 2018, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Aside from briefly looking at the market this morning, I'm going to look at the U.S. National debt and how it compares to other periods, especially back since 1900. And the reason I'm doing that is because one of the viewers asked a question in one of the comments about population and debt, and I looked into it and it was really interesting. So thanks for all the feedback, all the comments. That helps a great deal for me to get my ideas as well. And then looking at debt, I'm going to look at something quite well, it's not controversial, it's fact. I'm going to put the link above in the card. It's a video interview with Norman Dodd, who was the head researcher of the Rees Committee in the 1950s, and he's interviewed by G. Edward Griffin in 1982. G. Edward Griffin, of course, wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it shows very clear what the plan has been since around the early 1900s. And I'll try to show how the creation or the resumption of the income tax into the U.S., the creation of the Federal Reserve, have all been linked together with what happened then, and the tax exempt foundations as well. So I will probably be censored by YouTube. We'll have to see, maybe not. Anyway, the markets this morning. London is closed today for a bank holiday, but I would say that the markets are still fairly busy. The futures are still open. There are people probably in the office in London, but it's a skeleton staff, so to speak. The rest of Europe is open as well. So spot gold 13.1275, down about $2.30. I guess it's holding above that 13.02 level, which is quite important. The range overnight has been 13.19 to 13.1170. So we're near the bottom of the range here. Well, by the way, it's 5 to 9 a.m. London. I forgot to tell the time. Spot silver 1645, down 6 cents. Range has been 1644 to 1658. So again, we've drifted lower with the European markets opening. The Dow is up 52 points, 24,313. It was up more than 100 earlier on this morning when I looked. The S&P is up 6 points, so both up just under 0.25%. NASDAQ 100 futures up 36 or 0.5%. Currency-wise, we're continuing to see the euro come off. It's down to 119.27 versus the dollar now, down about 1/3%. The pound is a little stronger, 135.42, up 0.1%, but still below key resistances. The pound. Dollar against the yen. Dollar is a little stronger against the yen. 109.20, up 13 pips. It had been as low as 108.75. I guess the rebound in the dollar against the yen has put a little bit of pressure on precious metals, but not that much. Cryptocurrencies. Again, I was looking at the chart of Bitcoin, and there's very big resistance around the how can I say, the 10,000 level. It's I think it's the 200-day moving average, and you can clearly see on the chart that it's really big now. So, and we almost went up to 10,000 earlier this weekend, and now we're back down to 9,300. Ethereum, the same thing. We went up to over 800, is now 736. So I actually think we're going to take a little longer for the moving averages to readjust, and then for Bitcoin to break 10,000. It's going to take a while to work it out, in my opinion. So to the debt. So I was asked by a viewer. He commented asking a question, what I thought about the 21 trillion national debt that the US has now, does it really matter as the population has grown so much? So I did a little bit of research, and I looked at the population, and all these numbers are really easy to find on the internet. You just Google it, and you get a lot of times it comes from Wikipedia or from the US Treasury, or it's shown on Google. I Googled what was the population in 1900, and I got 76 million US population. What was the national debt? I got 2.13 billion. That was from the Treasury Department. So I calculated, very simple, that per capita, in terms of gold, the US had 1.23 ounces of debt per capita for every man, woman, and child. And gold at the time was at $20.67. Well, it wasn't priced at $20.67 because gold was money. So, but we would say nowadays that the price of gold was $20.67, but gold didn't have a price back then because gold, the dollar was gold. So that, in fiat dollars, that equates to $27.28 per capita. That's the one ounce, 23 troy ounce per capita in debt. And in today's dollar, I had to use the 1913 number because the inflation calculator doesn't go any further. But it's roughly, the $27.28 is roughly around $700 in today's fiat dollar per capita. So that's, keep that in mind, $700. And then I looked at 1946 because that was the year after the war ended. And if you look at the Treasury data for debt, that was the highest ever just after the war. And then it started coming down a bit. And it was 269.4 billion, the debt. So it went from 2.13 billion to 269.4 billion in only 46 years. And that's why I want to talk about the tax-exempt foundations later. Why did it change? What happened? So the population in 1946, according to Google, 141.4 million. So I got 53.74 ounces per capita, and that was with gold at $35 an ounce. And I'm not even looking really at the, I know the US had a lot of gold after the war, World War II, but I'm just looking at the debt per capita. So very high, went from 1.23 ounces to 53.74 ounces. So America, in real terms, is very indebted. I know America had a lot of gold. Some say it was 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. But that's not what I'm trying to point out here, is just the amount of debt. Then I went to 1980, where you could say the market reset the system. The price of gold went to $887.50, all-time high. Population was 226.5 million. 1980, the debt was 881 billion. So per capita, and I'm taking gold at the top, the reset price, so to speak, it was $887.50, the high. How do I get that price? Well, Jim Sinclair was very active in that market back then, and he always talks about that price. So I'm sure that it traded there if he's telling so. So per capita, that came to 4.38 ounces of gold. So from over 50 after 1946, we came down to 438 in 1980. So where are we today in terms of ounces, troy ounces of gold, in terms of per capita debt? Well, population according to Google, 325 million, 2018. The debt is around 21 trillion, we know that, or 21,000 billion. That's a better way to look at it. So per capita troy ounce of gold is 49.2 ounces. So we are almost back to post World War II levels. And we haven't had, I guess we have had continuous wars since, you could argue, the war on terror and all the proxy wars in the Middle East and Afghanistan, all around the world. So looking at 2018 per capita in fiat terms, that's $64,615 for every woman, man, child in the U.S. In 1900, it was 700. So it's in fiat terms, it's 92 times more indebted. So that the nation has become completely different than it was in 1900. I mean, and the debt makes that, and it's all because of the debt. In gold terms, though, it's 40 times more indebted, because if you look at the 49.2 divided by 1.23, that's 40 times more in debt in real terms, because gold, of course, is a great measure of value over thousands of years. And what else? If we, and this is not, I'm not saying that gold is going to go there, but if we wanted to have some kind of reset, like in 1980, not even, you know, back to 1900, where it was 1.23 ounces per capita, but if we go back to 4.38 ounces per capita today, at a price, from a price of $13.50, where we're roughly now in gold, it would mean that gold would need to go to $14,771. So now to the Norman Dodd interview. So Norman Dodd was a head researcher of the Rees Committee. That was a committee in Congress that was in charge of investigating the tax-exempt foundations. And he did a really great interview with G. Edward Griffin in 1982, just before he died. Now, as I said, I'll put the card above and also the link in the description. Basically, he was given access to the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, which was one of these foundations, to go and look at all their minutes since their inception in the early 1900s. And he sent one of his member of staff, Catherine Casey, who was a lawyer, and she was skeptical about all this investigation. She didn't think these foundations were doing anything that was nefarious. And so she had 2 weeks to go over all these files in the library at the Carnegie Endowment for Peace in New York. And Norman Dodd told her, you know, do spot reading, because you won't be able to do everything in 2 weeks. But the most interesting part of this is like the first year of their operation in 1908. And this is all from their minutes. This is not made up. And it says the trustees raised this specific question. And before I go further, you would ask, why would the Endowment Foundation give them access to that? Well, Norman Dodd thinks it's because the president at the time was a new guy, the member of staff, they were all very young, and they didn't expect that all these things would be there. So it's really compartmentalized. And that's how they got through the, that's how they got access to it. And it says, first year of operation, 1908, the trustees raised a specific question. This is from the minutes, and it's also from the video. I'm quoting Norman Dodd. And the question was, is there any means known more effective than war, assuming you wish to alter the life of an entire nation? And their conclusion was, no more effective means than war is known to humanity. And apparently this question was raised throughout 1908. And then in 1909, another question was how to get or how to involve the U.S. into a war. And that was recorded in the minutes. And the answer to that question was from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. The answer was, we must control the State Department. We must take over and control the diplomatic machinery of the country, or the U.S. And that was the objective of the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, international peace, was to get the United States into a war. And then there's another point that he brings about in the interview. This was also recorded in the minutes of the foundation. It said that they dispatched a telegram to President Wilson, and that it said, and I quote, it cautioned him that the war not to end too quickly. And the U.S., of course, was in World War I at the time. So why did I bring this up? Well, I think it has a lot to do with the debt, and how you can change a nation is through wars. And am I saying this was done by design? It looks like to me. Have I got any proof? Kind of, from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and the fact that they control the State Department. So what about the IRS and the Federal Reserve? Well, if you're going to have a war, you will need to collect taxes to pay for that war. So I've got the IRS website here. Brief history of IRS says, origin, the roots of IRS go back to the Civil War, when President Lincoln and Congress in 1862 created the position of Commissioner of Internal Revenue and enacted an income tax to pay war expenses. The income tax was repealed 10 years later, 1872. Congress revived the income tax in 1894, but the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional the following year. 16th Amendment. In 1913, Wyoming ratified the 16th Amendment, providing the three-quarter majority of states necessary to amend the Constitution. The 16th Amendment gave Congress the authority to enact an income tax. That same year, the first Form 1040 appeared after Congress levied a 1% tax on net personal incomes above $3,000 and 6% surtax on incomes above of more than $500,000. And it goes to say, and it's funny how they're kind of like blaming Wyoming for it, but it's not really. It says in 1918, during World War I, the top rate of income tax rose to 77% to help finance the war effort. It dropped sharply in the post-war years. So you get the idea. And then the Federal Reserve Act, of course, was an act of Congress passed on the 23rd of December 1913, and that's when, and without the IRS and the Federal Reserve, we couldn't have seen this complete change in the nation. Fiat money, humongous debts, and what was the excuse for all that? Was war. So there you go. This question about debt and population really got me digging deeper into the rabbit hole. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter, and I'll talk to you later.